Joe DeLeon joins us right now, host of the Ruffino and Joe Show. You could also hear him on Hack City, the podcast, and follow him on X, Joe DeLeon. Joe, long time no talk. We were talking a little bit before we got back on the air, and we're both Notre Dame fans, so let's actually start there. Obviously, hard not to love Marcus Freeman. Not really sold right now on the quarterback position, but I do think the defense is going to be really good. I think Jeremiah Love's going to be a legit Heisman candidate. They played in the national title game last year. Still heartbreaking to me, Jeremiah Smith and that 70-yard reception. Where are you at with Notre Dame this year, man? Can they win double-digit games and get back to the college football playoff?
I think the way that you kind of set this up for talking about Notre Dame, I think it's perfect. I think that the big question mark's at quarterback, obviously. You're losing Riley Leonard, who, albeit wasn't like the perfect quarterback, he wasn't the best passer, he's still a great composure in the pocket, which has helped them last year get as far as they did. There were so many late game situations where he stepped up and he was able to avoid a sack and just continue plays when nobody thought that he could. I think that with CJ Carr as the expected starter, there's a real high ceiling, but a potentially low floor. And I also wouldn't rule out Kenny Minchie, who has been really impressive to this point. He's been so impressive that basically he bumped out Stephen Jelly during this three-way quarterback battle, who entered the transfer portal and is transferring to Syracuse and will play for Syracuse this upcoming season. I think I have a lot of optimism, though, for the defense. I know that you're replacing Al Golden, who has been an amazing defensive coordinator for Notre Dame, but they bring back so much young talent that played at an elite level last year. Leonard Moore, Christian Gray at corner are going to be phenomenal. Adon Schuler at safety is going to be great again as well. And I look at Drake Bowen at linebacker, who's turning into a budding star in college football at the linebacker position. There's just so many guys that were sophomores and even freshmen last year that played at a tremendously high level that really is a testament to the way that Marcus Freeman has recruited this team and also developed it. With the schedule they have, there's no reason why they can't go 10-2 and make it back to the playoff.
Joe, what are your thoughts on Penn State, man? Obviously, such an interesting team. We all know kind of the perception around James Franklin and how people view him in big games. I feel like if people just kind of took the name off the jersey and just looked at how talented that roster is, a lot more people would buy in. Ryan and I think they win the Big Ten. We think they win the national championship. How high are you on them this year?
I'm very high on them. They have a very winnable schedule for them to get to the playoff, to go on a run again, to win the Big Ten championship game, and especially in a year where there's a lot of resetting that's happening in the Big Ten. Oregon, big reset. They put out a lot of guys to the NFL. Ohio State, massive reset with all the guys that moved on to the NFL. Penn State did exactly what we saw Michigan and Ohio State do over the last 2 years, where they enticed their upperclassmen to come back. They did an effective job of going into the transfer portal and addressing small needs, which for them was adding more wide receivers, adding some linebackers, adding a little bit more speed in a couple areas on defense. They have a championship caliber roster in a year where there are a lot of veteran-laden teams that lost a lot of important key players in the whole landscape of college football. Running back room is going to be dominant. Their offensive line is going to be phenomenal. Drew Shelton could be a first-round pick this year at left tackle. Their tight end room is still deep despite losing Tyler Warren, and there's so much first-round potential guys on their defense. But the question still comes down to, is Drew Aller able to take that next step? He has had a year-by-year improvement, but last year he faltered. He did not step up to the plate in their key games. Go look at his stats against SMU, against Boise State, against Notre Dame, and against Ohio State. Lowest games in terms of completion percentage. He had some of his worst turnovers. He had errant throws. He did have a lot of open receivers to throw to, but certainly didn't do enough to step up to the plate to help his offense take that next step, despite having a great tight end and great running backs to turn to. So Drew Aller, if he lives up to this really high expectation that we've put on his shoulders to be a Heisman Trophy contender and a first-round pick, if he lives up to that, then yeah, they will win a national championship.
Ohio State's win total is 10.5. Usually that's just an auto bet. You figure at worst 11-1, and they lose to Michigan. But this year, man, like we haven't really seen a whole lot of Julian Sayin. Obviously, they have to replace a lot, including Jim Knowles on the defensive side of the ball and Chip Kelly on the offensive side of the ball. Hartline's been there forever, but I'm more worried about the defense. They should be fine with the talent that they have, but I worry about the coaching. Where are you at with Ohio State this year, man? Like, do you think that they're an 11-win team, or do you think maybe they fall short of expectation?
That win total, that 10.5 number seems really high. Because, like, I look at last year and how good that team was
Yeah.
and how they managed to collapse in the regular season in just some small areas where the game that they had, the way that it finished against Oregon, the way that they fell against Michigan. And I know that they're hoping to bounce back in those areas this year. Their schedule is very favorable for them to go 10-2 again. And I think that they're going to be one of the teams that's knocking on the door of the playoff, but they have some of the biggest uncertainties because of that turnover that they have from all of the defensive linemen, all of the guys that they lost in their secondary, the multiple offensive linemen that they lost. They lost Emeka Ibuka, 2 starting running backs, and you're resetting at quarterback as well. I think that Sayan's going to be a really good player. He does need to prove himself, and even if he is an average guy, as long as he's better than Kyle McCord was 2 years ago, he's got Jeremiah Smith and he's got Carnell Tate to turn to, and I think Max Clare is going to be phenomenal. But the reset, especially a coordinator, is going to need to prove that this team is ready to go. I think a good season is in line for them. I don't think that they're going to bottom out just because they lost all these players, but they're not going to win a national championship, and nor do I think that they're going to win the Big Ten.
Joe, if you couldn't bet Clemson to win the ACC, who is the team that you would take a flyer on?
I would take a flyer on Miami. I've been really, really impressed with how Miami has transitioned from last year into this year. Corey Heatherman is going to be so transformative for this defense. He has every step of the way, every single destination he's been at, he has been a fantastic defensive coordinator. If we go all the way back to when he was at Maine, I faced off against him when I was a Rhode Island Ram. I was not an offensive player, I was a special teamer, but I witnessed firsthand how good that Maine defense was. So they are going to be a lot better, and I think that Carson Beck is going to fit really, really nicely in this system with Shannon Dawson and that O-line and running back room supporting him even more.
Texas is really hyped this year. Obviously, Arch Manning, one of the favorites to win the Heisman and go number 1 overall, even though most likely he goes back and plays another year in 2026. We're big Sark fans. At least we were until he called that pitch play on the 1-yard line that cost us some money in the college football playoff game. Do you think they're too overhyped, or do you like Texas to win the SEC this year?
I like Texas to win the SEC. Right now, Texas is my national championship pick. And I know that, I'm sitting here talking about all these teams that have turned over the roster, and Texas definitely did, but they have really recruited at a tremendously high level. Their offensive line, I think, could maybe even be better than last year. Trevor Gooseby is a guy who I'm keeping an eye on, who stepped in a couple of spots for them late in the season, who looked phenomenal. I think their defensive line is going to be nuts. Trey Moore, Colin Simmons coming back. And a receiver, we're going to see a ton of explosiveness with Ryan Wingo in his second season as a true sophomore. But it all comes down to my excitement being directed at Arch Manning. I think that Arch is going to live up to this hype that we've put on him. It is almost ambiguous and hard to describe what it means, but when you watch a player in a very small sample size that's barely played, that has natural touch, timing, decision-making, because he's been around football for so long, I think that it really shows what he can do and the caliber of play that he can hit. I'm not saying he wins the Heisman. I'm not saying he goes on to be the first overall pick, but I think he's going to jump onto the scene and be a top 5 quarterback by the end of the season, which will help them win a national title.
Who is the quarterback, Joe, that maybe as we do all these previews and we're looking forward to the season, we're not maybe talking about a lot now, but by season end is maybe becomes a household name, do you think?
I think that guy is going to be Fernando Mendoza. I think that Mendoza, from a prospect standpoint, is so gifted stepping into this Indiana offense. And Indiana last year, they got a ton of production and great stats out of Curtis Rourke, who, no offense to Rourke, is nowhere near the level of athlete and does not have the level of arm talent that Mendoza has. He was in a really a hellish spot at Cal. Did not have any protection, did not have a lot of receivers to turn to. Jay Knott was hurt most of last year, and he still elevated that team to a level that they should not have reached. So I think that Mendoza, we'll be talking about him in draft circles, and also we're going to be talking about him as one of the best quarterbacks in the country because he is so supremely gifted and he's going into the right situation.
Who's a team for you that's flying under the radar that maybe nobody's talking about? We talked about how Texas is maybe a little bit too hyped. We already talked about Oregon and Ohio State, the teams everybody's talking about. Is there anybody that you like that's maybe flying under the radar, like last year's Indiana team?
I think that the team that could unexpectedly reach the college football playoff and shock everybody, it's Washington. Ooh. I know that this is going to require a lot, and I'm trying to go with like a true dark horse here. I'm not going to sit here and name Illinois, which was 9-3 last year. Washington has a very unique defense led by led by Ryan Walters, who was a great defensive coordinator at Illinois before he struggled as a head coach at Purdue. He has two enormous corners, 6'4" guys, Takario Davis and Ephesians Prysock, who are going to be impossible to throw against. And I think most importantly on offense, you look at Jonah Coleman, who's a great running back, but Damon Williams Jr., a quarterback who was a true freshman last year, started to play at the end of the season, and was an unbelievable athlete who made some great throws. No one watched that Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl game that he had against Louisville. Justifiably, nobody watched that game. But he started with a really bad interception, and then he locked in and almost led Washington to a win in that game as a true freshman. I think that kid is special. And I also think that overall, when you've got a guy that's as athletic and as mobile as him, he is going to help them steal games that they're not supposed to win. So if there's this shocking 10-2 team that's got a couple of nice wins on the resume that's going to be thrown in the conversation as a college football playoff team, I think it could totally be Washington.
I love it. Joe, Big 12 is as wide open as I've ever seen a conference be to start the year, man. I mean, you really could make a case for like 8 or 9 different teams to win the league, and I think you could make a good argument. Who would be your team that if you had to plant your flag with, you would bet to win the Big 12?
Yeah, right now my attention's on Texas Tech. I think that, we could talk a lot about Arizona State coming back, and, Sam Leavitt's a great, tremendous player, and I have high expectations for them to be in the top of the mix, and Utah's got the best offensive line in the Big 12. But Texas Tech did some really special things in the transfer portal. They brought in SEC caliber guys on both sides of the football. I think David Bailey is going to be super disruptive, the edge rusher that they got from Stanford. I think that Quentin Joyner, the running back that they added from USC, is one of the most under-talked about portal additions in all of college football. He is a spark plug and didn't get a ton of touches because he had some fumbling issues last year as a younger player for USC, and he was competing with Woody Marks for that top spot. Baron Morton is also a really quality quarterback, and I think everything is going to mesh super, super well for this offense, for this team in a conference where, as you just talked about, there are so many chances to knock any opponent off on a week-to-week basis. They have by far the best roster. It just all comes down to, can Joey McGuire capitalize on it?
We have to ask you because everybody talks about it. North Carolina, do you think it's going to be a disaster? Do you think that they could at least win like 7-8 games year one for Bill? I don't know what that offense is going to look like. You would figure the defense is going to be much better than anything we've seen at Carolina in like a decade, though.
I mean, I think that anyone who's expecting this team to be good is getting a little bit ahead of themselves. It doesn't mean that they can't be good, but I think that we should just have no expectations. We should just kind of sit and watch it from a distance. Let's see. It's kind of like a car that's on fire. Like, will it slowly go out on its own and get fixed, or is it going to completely combust and completely, burst into flames? I'm hoping that there's no more distractions. I think that that's the key. If there's no more 24-year-old girlfriend-related distractions and headlines that are happening, if there's no storm-offs on the sideline in the middle of the season or something weird happening, yeah, they can go out there and they can win 6 football games. I think at the very least, I would hope that they're a bowl team. They have a decent roster. Mac Brown recruited it well. I know that there were some departures that happened in the transfer portal as soon as Mac Brown left, but Bill Belichick's good enough of a coach, and he's prepared enough that he's going to get this team ready to win most of their ball games. I think that the transition to where he gets this team into an actual winning direction is probably going to be in year 2, because it's tough. It is tough to immediately ignite a team to hit the ground running in year 1. You need to already have a veteran-laden roster in order to accomplish that.
Joe, we got about 30 seconds. What college football game are you most excited for this season? Like, we get a ton of good ones week 1, obviously some rivalry games, some good Big Ten SEC games. Is there a game that is at the top of your watchability this year in college football in 30 seconds?
I'm locked in. Notre Dame, Miami. I'm going to be at that game. That game is going to set the stage, I think, for both of those teams to prove if they are ready to make runs in 2025.
Joe, you're the best. Let's do this again soon, man. 30 days away from week 0 of the college football season.
Thanks,
Joe DeLeon right there.